2020 FDOT Design Manual, FDM 201 Design Controls Overview, presented by Dwayne Carver. In FDM 201, we made a few changes this year. One thing that we included was the introduction of context classification as a design control. This was added because we realized that context classification does in fact control a number of the other design criteria that are necessary to do roadway design. We also added some language to clarify what can happen and what the options are for dealing with 3R projects and which kinds of things might need a design variation and which things might not. We'll talk a little bit more about that. There was also a clarification kind of related to that and under FDM 201.5.3 relating whether or not design speed needed to be changed based on posted speed and vice versa. And again, we'll talk about that in the presentation. So this is the new language that was added in 201.2 on context classification. And what it points out is that when you're looking at context classification, that actually determines some key design criteria for elements of arterials and collectors. However, for limited access facilities, the context classification does not apply. So for limited access, that basically is the context classification, and we wanted to kind of make that clear here. So if you look at the context classification for the roadway, if it's limited access, you'll see it simply listed as LA for the context classification. Also, it's important to understand that even if a roadway is limited access, then it doesn't have context classification. It gets assigned and designed based on the speed and the other criteria that you have for it. Wherever that roadway, wherever that limited access roadway touches down to the arterial system, then you do have to think about context classification. And this is, we try to make that clear in this section of the FDM, just making it more apparent that you're dealing with limited access, and then where you actually have to interact with arterial system or down to a collector street, those roadways will have a context classification applied. So you need to think about how you're going to make a transition from usually the higher speed free flow conditions that you're expecting in limited access to whatever condition you might be on the ground based on the context classification of that roadway. So even though limited access is its own classification, you do need to look at context class when you get off of limited access and access the arterial system. If you need to know what the classification is of the roadway you're looking at, you should contact your district complete streets coordinator to obtain that information. It is obtainable in a preliminary information from other places, including RCI, but that information should be considered preliminary for planning purposes. If you're actually doing a project, make sure you work directly with the district complete streets coordinator to make sure nothing has changed. A lot of times there are also other information about that corridor beyond just the context classification that that coordinator can inform you about that might affect how you do your design. So again, this section was added because it determines the key design criteria for arterials and collectors. And if you have any questions about it, you can go to FDM 200, which is actually, the whole section there is on context classification. It tells you more about what the classifications are, how they're determined, and refers you to other references for more information about that. So moving on to 201.5.3, which is for 3R projects. We made some changes to this to address questions that we'd had regarding when it was necessary to do a design variation and when that wouldn't be necessary. Specifically, we wanted to look at situations where the districts would like to reduce a design speed to match a posted speed, and they wanted to know, do they have to do a variation for that? And also there was some clarification about what happens if the existing design speed or posted speed meets AASHTO's criteria, but is not within the allowable range shown for the context classification. And we want to clarify that we do not have to do a design variation in that condition if you're maintaining an existing design speed or posted speed. So this is that language out of chapter 201. And basically what it's pointing out is that when you're talking about posted speed, so you're looking at the posted speed and you got a situation on your project where the posted speed is greater than the design speed that was used in the original highway, then you can process a variation for that or a design exception for each design element that does not meet the criteria for the higher posted speed. And that's described how to do in other parts of the FDM. You use the criteria based on the posted speed whenever you're correcting a specific highway feature that has a significant crash history or for any new highway feature. So what that means is if you're working on the project and you realize that there's something that's causing a crash, maybe you have a sight distance problem or some other issue, maybe there's something that's not set off far enough from the highway, then you want to use the posted speed as your design criteria when you're correcting that. Or if you're adding something to the highway, then you're going to use that new posted speed as your new design speed for that. Now, if you have the opposite situation where your design speed that was used in the roadway is now higher than what the posted speed is, and a common example where we find this is a road that perhaps was built when there was no development around it, and over time the area around it has developed, traffic has increased, and so the average speeds on that roadway are now much lower than what the road was actually even designed for to carry, so it really never reaches its intended design speed. In those situations, this chapter clarifies that it's okay to reduce the design speed to match the posted speed, if that's what you want to do, so that you can begin moving that roadway to be more in line with the actual desired operating speeds on the roadway. There's more information about how to do this in chapter 202, and there's actually a separate webinar on chapter 202 that you can look at, but essentially we want you to know that you do not require design variation when you do that. So when you're lowering the design speed to match the posted speed, you don't need a design variation for that. You do need individual design variations when you are trying to go the other way though, and you have a situation where the posted speed is higher than the design speed. Okay, so again, just to recap, if the posted speed is higher than the design speed, you do need to process a design variation or exception for each element that does not meet the criteria for that higher posted speed. And you want to use the criteria based on the posted speed, and here's situations when you're correcting a specific highway feature that has a significant crash history, or for any new highway feature. In those situations, you treat the posted speed as the new design speed essentially. On the other hand, if you have a posted speed that's lower than the original design speed of the roadway, then you can reduce that design speed as you introduce new elements to try to move the roadway to be more in line with the way that it's actually operating, as long as you meet all the values in table 201.5.1. And you can also refer to the speed management strategies in FDM 202 that can be used in conjunction with the reduction of the speed. And there's no design variation required when you are lowering the design speed to match the posted speed. The end.